So yesterday I started with this Bored Panda article talking about what trad wives actually experienced in the 20th century, not these women cosplaying as trad wives, despite the fact that they are probably making money online from it. So I'm going to do a few more of these examples of women's actual lives. So I did 1 through 5 yesterday. I'm going to pick up at 6. She says, my grandmother didn't really want to get married and had desperately wanted to become a doctor. She was married after the partition, India, Pakistan, in 1948. It was arranged. Before then, she had been quite politically active, having been arrested, among others, protesting the British occupation. She ended up going for her master's in the 60s when her kids were older, but I think she always felt unfulfilled. The great irony is her younger sister, grandma was 20 years older, ended up going to med school and becoming a doctor. My grandmother was adamant about all of us finishing our education and got mad at my mom when she heard I was taking sewing classes at the community center one summer. She didn't want me stuck doing that type of work. My grandma taught me how important it was to have your own money. She used to hide and give me cash to get her things, or give me more birthday money or Eid money than my grandpa. She would ask how much he gave and then secretly hand me double. She taught me that having a career in an education is very important for women. I think if she'd had the option, she wouldn't have gotten married and probably been child free. Her mother in law and maiden sister in law lived with them and caused problems and fights their whole marriage. She never learned to drive because grandpa wanted sister in law to learn also. But my great aunt somehow would interfere with every attempt at her being independent, often being so cruel to my grandmother. And her and grandpa fought most of their lives, even in old age. She was a very strong woman who taught me strength and to go after my dreams since she didn't get the opportunity to do so. Sorry for the rant, but she definitely did not want us to become housewives and tried her best to have her own secret money always. The thing is, people don't know and understand that the women in our lives are many times the reasons why many of us are independent and feminist, because they have shown us what it's like to live when you are dependent on somebody else. You see firsthand, and many times you either know by example that that is not the life that you want, or you are taught, like, no, you will not end up like me. Number 7, my mom was the typical trapped Christian trad wife. She had 3 daughters and told us constantly that we needed to be self-sufficient and never rely on a man. When she was first married as a woman, she could not get her own bank account or credit card without my father's permission. She had no identity other than Mrs. Dad's first name and last name. My father kept an iron grip on her, and she was very depressed. I made sure that I could always fully support myself. I would never put myself in that position because I grew up seeing the abuse perpetrated on so many women by their husbands. Never, ever, ever give away your power and identity to another. I believe in equal partnership in a relationship. And like I just said, a lot of the times the women in our lives are the reason why we are fiercely independent, because we just cannot see ourselves ending up like that. Personally, I was too young, but lots of women in our family's social circle were ye old wife. Overall, they seemed content enough, but once you really listen to them talking amongst themselves, you could hear the faint tendrils of unhappy. This one dropped out of Juilliard, although her husband finished his education naturally. That one left her job at the courthouse as a judge's assistant, although her husband hadn't left his job naturally. That one wanted to travel and, of course, could not, although her husband made frequent business trips naturally. This one loved sports, but certainly couldn't indulge as a wife and a mother in playing games, although her husband never missed his days at the golf course naturally. All of them, every last one of them, had given up something they had loved or wanted in order to marry and have children, as society dictated they were supposed to do. The men had not sacrificed anything that I ever heard them mourning over. The men could happily go off to deer camp for a week, and the women might go to a 2 hour long Tupperware party presentation. The wives took refuge in the spotless house and soap operas mostly. There was a self deletion, a unaliving of a philandering husband. A few had to take pills for their nerves. Some of them were completely flummoxed when their husband died and they were faced with mysteries like writing a check or driving a car. I always felt faintly sorry for these women. Now I look back and am horrified at all the lost potential, the wasted earning power, the abandoned ambitions, the thwarted dreams, the abnegation of self that these women embraced, because that's just how things are, my dear. Trad wife of today does not seem anywhere close to all that. They can bake their own bread and dress like Beaver Cleaver's mom, but no, it's not quite the same now as it was then. But also, the women of today have the opportunity to go in and out of that lifestyle if they choose to. The women from back then didn't have those choices because they didn't have the capacity to drive unless someone taught them. They didn't have the capacity to earn their own money and have any financial independence. They didn't have say over their reproductive systems, despite the fact that now people are still coming for women's reproductive rights. Number nine, an English woman I know told me a great story that I think fits here. She came to America in the 50s after marrying a GI. By 1960s, she had two children. Right after she gave birth to her second child, she developed a really terrible pelvic infection, like fever, sharp pains, hurt to pee, the whole nine yards. Her husband was deployed, so a neighbor friend drove her and all their children to the hospital. Her friend waited in the car with the kids and she walked in alone. She explained at the reception area that she had just given birth and was in terrible pain. They refused to treat her because she was wearing pants. They said if she came back in a skirt, she could be seen. She frantically made her way back to the car and told her friend what happened. Friend immediately takes off her own skirt in the car and they tried to trade bottoms so the English woman could go back in. She couldn't get the skirt zipped up because she had just had a baby. So they left. The friend took her to her own gynecologist, who, after examining her, said that her pelvis was so infected he thought he was going to have to give her a full hysterectomy. She did end up having surgery, but he was able to leave all her bits intact. Took her ages to recover, and I nearly fell out of my chair listening to this story. We will never know truly how bad it was for so many women then. Stories like these don't often get told, and it's a shame because these women were hard. They put up with is unreal. Oh, and all this took place in California, which surprised me to no end because I thought they'd have been one of the most progressive states for women. This country, no matter where it is now, was built on sexism and racism. California and other states were not exempt from the sexist and racist system that this country was built on. Because, and honestly, many people from the South went west. Many of these people didn't just all of a sudden lose their sexism and racism because they ended up in California. This will be the final one I do. Number 10, my father was visiting family after his mother passed away in her late 80s. As he tells it, the scene was himself, my stepmother, a number of my grandmother's sisters, and assorted friends of my grandmother and great aunts, mostly women. My father was talking to a woman whose husband had recently died. She, like pretty much every woman there, had been married her entire life and had lived as a trad wife. At one point, she looked at my father and said, I had forgotten that men could be kind. And let's be real, men didn't have to be kind because women were their property. Their wives were their property. They could do what they wanted to with their property. These women were their appliance that they could treat how they wanted to. And they could trade it in when they felt like it, when it wasn't useful to them anymore, or when they just wanted to upgrade. I'm so glad to live right now. I'm so glad for all of the options that we have right now, but we can't take it for granted because so many people are trying to take us back to a time where women didn't have these rights. All right, join the conversation. Let me know what you think about these stories. Don't forget to like, comment, and share. Yesterday, I made a post, Trad Wife to Poverty Pipeline and Women's Invisible Labor. And I got some amazing comments on my YouTube page, and I want to share them. I have been talking about the Trad Wife to Poverty Pipeline and the Trad Wife to Single Mother Pipeline for a while. And the women's story and commentary is the reason why I continue to make these videos, because women are the ones that are burdened when the marriage dissolves. Women are the ones that are scrambling for survival's sake for themselves and for their children. And this is the reason why I am adamant that women need a plan B, C, D, E, F, G, L, M, N, O, P. Barefoot Hippie says, I've witnessed at least a dozen women who I was closely associated with get traded in for younger ladies. When one of my brothers traded in his first wife, it absolutely broke my heart. So pointless to have anything to do with guys romantically. Stephanie says, same, and definitely changed my opinion of male family members. They never seem satisfied because they are actually miserable with themselves. Kitty Cats said, agreed. Married. Patriarchy overpromised at best or flat out lied to women about what they were signing up for. Women have been lied to, but men have also. It's all delusional because men think that getting married means that they come with a servant and a bangmaid. And women don't know that they are basically signing up to be that servant and a bangmaid. And not even just that, a servant and a bangmaid wife appliance that can be traded in once the man gets tired. Nightwish is the greatest band takes exception to be talking about women as in traded in, but this is literally how they talk about women. They always talk about replacing the woman or trading her in, or she has too much mileage. This is the reason why I do talk about women being a wife appliance. They do dehumanize us to the point where we're simply a resource for them, something to service them, and that's pretty much it. And once they get the use out of their appliance, they upgrade when they feel they want to. Women have got to know and understand this. Once we know and understand that they put us in the wife appliance category, then we can do what we need to do for survival's sake. JOG says, I was a retail manager for years, and so many of the people we hired were women in their 40s and 50s, even 60s, who were working for the first time in their adult life. And all they could get was minimum wage or part time, no benefits jobs as cashiers and stock clerks. They were scared, depressed, shocked. They thought they had it all figured out by landing a man at 20 to 25 years old and having some kids to lock it all down, only to find out that it is a short ride on a long track. I felt bad for them, but hopefully the young women of today are listening and learning. Just Beachy says, I'm in a Facebook group for women regarding personal finance. There's not a week that goes by where a trad wife is blindsided by divorce. Often they don't have a college education and they've been raising children from anywhere from a couple of years to 15 years. No money, no resources. Family is their church, and that turns their back on them. There's a lack of legal assistance and beds in shelters. That's the thing. So I have talked about this enough to know that there are not as many resources. And people are like, well, what about alimony? What about child support? Not every woman gets alimony or child support, even when she deserves it. That's the reason why women have got to protect themselves and know and understand what life is like when you are the caretaker, but you have no education or career experience. Laura says, my mother was a trad wife and a stay at home mom until she divorced my dad after 13 years of marriage. She was a married single mother with a husband who wouldn't lift a finger to help with childcare or household tasks, and with an iron fist on the finances. He saddled her with 6 children. She had no college education, very little work experience. From the time she divorced, I was around 10 years old, until she was a few years from dying. She was working 2 to 3 jobs at minimum wage as wait staff in food service, doing clerical work. She lost absolutely everything. I watched as her life slowly drained from her and vowed to make different choices. And I'm fortunate to have those choices. I'm now in my 40s, never married, no children, and thank God for that. And the part right here, slowly drained from her. Literally, women are resources for them. These men get to excel, they get to benefit from draining the resources, the time, energy, and resources from a woman who is doing the things in the home that support them. And then after they drain the life out of you, what do you have left? Starling Swallow says, I feel like I was bred to marry an abuser. My parents modeled the trad wife patriarchal marriage to me, and an abusive marriage at that. My mom is a codependent enabler to my narcissistic trait, OCD, ADD, neglectful, and abusive father. Both are critical as heck. I wasn't prepared for adulthood. And in church, I was taught, brainwashed into thinking that getting married and having babies was my life calling. I did not know how to say no. I didn't know about bodily autonomy. I wasn't taught how to identify, I'm sorry, I wasn't taught to find identity in myself. I wasn't taught self-esteem, boundaries, what toxic traits in someone looks like. I wasn't taught about manipulation or red flags. I was served up on a naive platter to an abuser who pretended to be a Christian and who also mirrored me during dating. So I pretty much fell in love with myself. I'm still working through my rage towards my parents. My father still neglects his kids. He has never pursued any of us relationship wise, emotional attachment. So he's a weird stranger to us that we all call dad. That generation is just a mess. Maybe ours too, a bit. But at least we're digging into our baggage to learn. And I learned things about ourselves. My parents think they're fine. Women need to understand what mirroring is. This is a manipulation tactic. When you answer the question, what are you looking for in a man? Or you tell them all of your belief system, they take that on and act like that they have those same beliefs. You have got to know and understand that this is a manipulation tactic to get you to drop your guard and bring you in. It does go with future faking and love bombing. It's a tactic, and once they get their hooks in you, you're stuck. And if you have never been taught to have boundaries or self esteem or say no, you fall for this because you haven't built up any self defense. Your parents haven't built up any self defense for you or helped you. So this person was basically, like she said, bred to be in this abusive relationship. So Princess Kiski says, got to see a real trad wife to poverty pipeline example today. Someone I went to college with is scrambling to find work and doesn't qualify for anything that would pay the wages she needs. While in school, she stopped at the associate's degree, so she can't even apply to teaching, even though schools are desperate for teachers. She's been a housewife for the past few years, so that's a red flag, for even minimum wage employers. The husband is not divorcing her, but he's out of work due to an injury, I think. No income, at least one special needs baby, and a mortgage. This situation is my version of hell. And I talk about that too. It's not always that the man is divorcing, but what if he dies early? What if he can't work? What if he's laid off of work? Women need to have some sense of survival because, regardless, you need to be able to pay your rent. You need to be able to clothe your children. You need to be able to feed your children. So, you need to have these plans B, C, D, E, F, G, L, M, N, O, P, all of that. And I will continue to say this. I want women to be able to survive and thrive regardless of marital status. All right, join the conversation. I'm thankful for these people that have shared their commentary so that we can all have these cautionary tales at the front of our minds. And I'm going to continue to talk about them. Like, comment, and share.